Vikram and the panel. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Hi, everybody. So topic here is the next 5 years strategic planning for CIOs and CISOs. I've got a pretty good panel here. We'll get to them in a second. Just quickly about NSS, we're an advisory firm similar to Gartner or 451, the difference being that we actually test products. So our core competency is we started out as a testing lab and we've grown into an advisory firm. So in terms of what do we do? Just keep this very simple. We basically are rating products, rating technology based upon results in the lab, and all of our analysis is fact-based. So having said that, move on to the topic at hand. So Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And so the bottom line here is that a compromise at a company nowadays is no longer hitting, it may make news if it's a big company, but it's sort of a yawn, right? Everybody's been compromised and we all know that. So what are we going to change? So we've got a group of panelists here to talk about that and talk about where CIOs should be making their investments and so on. So Alan Kessler from Vormetric, Andrew Lee from ESET, Brian Smith from Click, Ian Fu from Huawei, Jason Brevnik from Sourcefire, and Manish Gupta from FireEye. So, okay. So one of the questions is there's a lot of new technologies that are, you've been hearing about this conference and elsewhere, right? Everything from, cloud computing, SDN, virtualization, and so on, right? So how is this all going to play out? So let's dive right into it here. So what are the game changer technologies for the next 3 to 5 years? I really wanted to hear some thoughts here. Anybody want to go first? So Alan?
I'd comment that virtualization, cloud, and even in the conversation earlier today, software-defined networking, the whole idea that the physical concept of the network is dramatically changing. Those are a few.
I think that one of the most exciting new types of technology that we'll see is kind of this idea of combining things like the Internet of Things with kind of real-world networks as they exist now and typical infrastructures that we have. So things like implantable medical devices for diagnosis, which send information on body biometrics or body metrics to a wireless device, which can then inform your doctor or hospital of your current state and those things. I think those are going to be some of the technologies that we'll start to see that will change things.
I would also add the convergence of communications technologies with information technologies that we're seeing. When people are using information to run their business, it's either access to the information to make a decision or exchange of information, collaboration that is driving the business. I think that convergence is starting to change. Some of the way we look at data centers, support infrastructure, and even information systems to support those. And I think we'll also see quite a bit of change driven across different parts of the network by consumerization of devices. And I think most IT managers and CIOs are beginning to feel that pressure today. I think that will only increase over the next 3 to 5 years.
So I'll jump in right here real quick. SDN, virtualization, cloud, big data, they're all interesting technologies, but they fundamentally enable analytics and real-time decision-making with context about your consumer or your partner. And enable our organizations to make decisions in near real time about the changes they should be doing for both efficiencies and cost structures and capitalizations and prices and that kind of stuff. I think analytics will ultimately be the game changer tech that applies to and wraps up all of these different pieces that enable real-time change.
Okay, so just from a bigger picture perspective, there's lots of pieces that are coming together, but the summary is it's about sort of this big data and analytics. Number one. Number two is it's the Internet of Things, so you've got more places that data is coming from. Is that pretty much summarize? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's
one additional comment on that is I think we're seeing the combination. Security always comes in almost as an afterthought after utility in environments. And so what we're seeing is the combination of virtualization technologies, both network and compute virtualization, along with an explosion of devices coming into the network. Friends of mine that run university networks say that they're seeing 7 to 10 IP addresses associated with each student at this point, between their Pandora radio alarm clocks and their cell phones and their devices, all the devices they bring in. The combination of all this is going to make traditional security controls very, very difficult to deal with, because all our security controls are associated with IP addresses and physical devices, and with the explosion of those things and the mobility of those things, it becomes very difficult for those controls to be effective. So
that leads to the next question, which is how are those technologies going to impact security for better or worse? And that was a really good segue, Brian, so thank you.
Vic, I would say that building on what Brian offered, because of virtualization, really standing back and looking at what are the bad guys after, right? Building a fortress around your network no longer works. Everybody knows that. Members of the panel here are introducing products to try and defend against it. The bad guys are inside. They already have access to your network. In fact, you may have hired them. And so now what do? And our view is that you protect what matters. You find a way to lock down the data. You find the way to reduce the attack surface. So even if they're inside, you can block them. And quite frankly, with cloud virtualization, your data might be somewhere else. So even if you're confident that you're running your data center and you can trust your people, what if your data is in someone else's cloud? How do you know whether the systems administrator who's managing that server is someone you can trust? These are some of the challenges. And by focusing on the stuff that they're after or the stuff that they want to change, the data, that's a way to defend against some of these new threats.
So it comes down to having the visibility of where your data lives, where your IP is, and where your people are, and whether or not their activities fit with the actions that are happening. When we start talking about sharing this information across industries and detecting, the malfeasance and the attackers and their advanced methods, closing the time gap, where today, I think the data breach report from Verizon put us at 100+ days to close the gap from detection. I think fundamentally, as this information sharing and analytics come to play, we can close that gap down. We can close it to weeks. We can close it to days. For some organizations, we may even be able to close it down to hours or minutes. Right? That's when you start understanding where your data is going, who's after it, and how to bring the controls in. While we have kind of two conflicting priorities, the openness and consumerization of IT and the ability to access data from anywhere, we have the virtualization of networks and SDN and the ability to create business process controls that are above physical infrastructure. The information we achieve in consumer IT devices contrasted with our ability to change the way the network looks and change the way our services look in real time, I think should allow us to bring them back together in some amount of time and bring those controls in without having a traditional border.
So Vic, I just wanted to add to the point made earlier about the challenges in security. Since my focus is data center, one of the things we're seeing is that with the level of granularity and fluidity afforded by some of the cloud computing structures, software-defined networks, and other technologies that are allowing flexibility and agility in the data center, the consequences of that are going to be complications and complexities in applying security policies in the traditional manners in which we're used to. Now we've got a whole bunch of moving targets. Some of the notions of how we'd apply security or segregate security no longer apply. So I think that over the next 3 to 5 years, those will have to dramatically change in order to accommodate those newer environments.
Yeah, I would say, look, I think that fundamentally, the biggest challenge that we have is that the CIOs and CISOs are almost at loggerheads. Because CIOs are incented to embrace the latest technology. We were talking about Wi-Fi, higher speeds, software-defined networking, faster data centers, et cetera. And the CISO has the challenge of protecting all of these newfangled ideas. CISOs are still struggling with technologies that have been deployed over the last 10 years. They still have to, unfortunately, part of the challenge with security is everything that I've deployed over the last 10 years, I can't take the risk of throwing any of that out. So I think fundamentally what we have to be able to do as a security industry to help our customers is to be able to make managing security easier. And that has to start from not having to need sort of 10 or 20 different products, but a few set of products that provide far more actionable information.
And increased visibility, absolutely.
I think I'd agree with what Manish has been saying. I think manageability is a key thing. But one of the interesting things that I see, and I've been in the security industry a very long time, is the way that we have actually, in a sense, you can look at it as if we have created a smarter attacker. And that's actually, I think, a good thing, because what has happened is as we've innovated, as we've secured things, as we've been able to create more visibility into our security, we have also forced attackers into further smaller and smaller corners, enabling them to come up with new types of attacks. But what we've actually got a challenge with now is there's just so much data, there's so much information, and there's so much noise. And as we see more and more noise, the challenge is trying to pick out the difference and the change in the noise that shows that you've got an attacker. And I think this is one of the big challenges that we're going to have. And it comes to analytics, it comes to data management. How do you create layers of defense that actually allow you to identify within all the noise the activities of an attacker or the activities of someone who is doing something that you don't want them to do with your data? And there are different ways of doing that. And I don't think all of that is technological either. I think some of that is educational, because as we have developed more and more technologies that enable us to catch infiltrations, the attackers have simply gone after the simplest part of the network, which is residing in half an inch of skull behind it. So
it's interesting, and I think the panel would agree that with state-sponsored attacks, they are well funded. They will outfund any enterprise. Maybe some of the governments around the world can compete dollar per dollar with talent and resource. So then what do you do? So the idea of knowing what you don't know, and big data and analytics and learning and sharing information is critical. Doing that more quickly, which I know some on the panel focus on, and then once you know that, lock down the data and have a policy in place that's efficient, that's easy, transparent, and doesn't require you to change your infrastructure.
So Brian?
Yeah, so I agree with many of the things being said here, but I have a little different view of it. I think for the last 20 years or so, we've taken the approach of an industry of trying to armor the sheep. And I think we need to start kind of hunting the wolves. We haven't been, we have tried to make the devices more secure by putting antivirus on them, by putting controls in the network that prevent breaches. And the fact is the bad guys just figure out ways around those. And to put the exclamation point on that, if you look at the Verizon breach report, the number, how people find out about intrusions, only 5% of them are detected from security devices. So of the $68 billion that the industry spends on IT security, they detect 1 in 20 of the intrusions that come out from those devices. And that is just that says that that approach is not going to work. And I think Jason and Alan are exactly right, is that what we need to start doing is looking for the anomalous data and the pieces that go to show that an attack is in progress, and do that quickly enough that we can prevent the damage, that we can get out in front of this. If you see a sequence of events, if you see a gun being stolen followed by a robbery at a house, you can predict the murder of the girlfriend in advance, or the probability of that murder, and get out in front of it and prevent that damage from happening. And that's the type of predictive analytics we got to get to. it's very, very challenging, and in part it's challenging because of the lack of expertise in this environment. There's just very, very few good IT security experts, and that's one of the greatest challenges facing our industry.
So that data point, 1 in 20, 5% kind of supports that, you don't have to run faster than the bear, you just have to run faster than you. Fundamentally, it's an economics game. They want to make money, and it's easier and cheaper for them to make money by hitting broad targets and having, their goals, and we're not making it difficult enough on them. As we close that detection gap, as we close the window of opportunity for them and make them change their business process, then it becomes less profitable for the attacker, and it becomes more profitable for you through less loss. The balance, of course, is going to be in a collective approach to solving that problem so that everybody is playing together in the field, not everybody trying to defend. You try and put small little regiments around the country and have them defend against a nation, you're never going to get success, right? You have to create an army of people to do this. And that's the information sharing and analytics we need to bring to the table and have everybody participate in order to really put a dent in that economic process.
I think that's true, but I think we ignore. We talk about it because we're in it and we see it and we know what should be done because we're already aware. The biggest problem that I see every single day is most people just don't know anything about it. So there are people who are running 5-year-old systems, unpatched, no antivirus, no firewall, nothing. No, forget all even your basic security controls just aren't there. And until people realize that that's really a fundamental part of the problem, because that creates an opportunity for a stepping stone for an attack into your organization, because every single one of those employees in your organization is also a home user, is also someone walking around in the street and going to a doctor's surgery and going to the car garage and giving their kids whatever on a USB stick so it goes into the schools, which comes into your university network, which goes into your enterprise research network, and so on and so on. All of those things have to be taken care of. So there's a fundamental education problem right at the base before we start even talking about technology.
So what technology should we be investing in? This was sort of, we started talking about this a little bit, but strategically, when I don't want to talk about this next budget cycle, but looking out, if I'm a big enterprise and I want to seed certain technologies because I'm saying 5 years from now, if I'm going to have some of this stuff solved, where am I making my initial investment? Even knowing it's not perfect right now, what types of things should we be doing?
So I'll jump right in there. We approach the problem set from a number of ways, but one is, focusing on technologies that allow you to interdict at various points of the attack chain and give you visibility into what's happening and allow you to bring some control. Fundamentally, the business wants to answer, are the attackers here? What did they get? When did they get it? Where did it go? And what's my exposure? And if the technologies you're investing in can't help you answer those questions or don't help you produce a funnel to be able to answer those questions, you need to rethink the investment. A lot of organizations today, sadly, do not have the ability to go back and see what was compromised when. They have the ability to take a phone call that, some customer's credit card information is now out there and we've correlated it to your organization, and now they're not able to answer how it happened. You need to start with that fundamental premise of being able to answer those questions and get technologies in that could give you the visibility into how it occurred.
Vic, I would say technology that allows you to implement policy that will allow your network to change, that will allow your data to move and still give you confidence that that policy is enforced, and something that scales, that's transparent, that's easy, that's strong, and that's that quite frankly doesn't impale the performance of the solution.
So I want to give Brian a chance. Just one question, one thought here, which is ecosystem, right? Sort of what's coming to mind from what you guys are talking about is having a technology ecosystem that supports the business, as opposed to sort of retrofitting security in after the fact. Is that sort of what we're, and Brian, I don't know if that changes what you were going to talk about there. But.
Well, I think about not just the technological aspects of it, but there's really 3 key things I think that CIOs need to invest in from a very broad perspective. One is allowing more information sharing. It's been changing, and this attitude's been changing in the industry, but people tend to be very secretive about their security threats. And we need to, as an industry, start sharing that knowledge more, because the attackers are essentially businesses. They've developed a piece of software, and then they want to make a return on investment on that software. And they'll attack one company and attack another company and attack another company and walk on down the line. So we want to collapse that economy, and the way we do that is by sharing that, what we're seeing in one organization, so we can get out in front of it and in the other organization. So sharing of information is number one. Number two is developing the security expertise and professionals within your organization. Most organizations where they get into security is they have an IT infrastructure, and then someone says, oh, we should worry about security, and they appoint one of the IT guys and says, you're now head of security, and by the way, you don't haven't lost your day job. And so we need to invest in that training and education and professionalization of that group of the industry. And then the third part is, to Alan and Jason's point, is visibility. Visibility into technologies that allow you visibility into how users are actually using the network, how users are misusing the network, those sorts of things. Once you have that visibility, it begets policy, and it begets effective policy and effective policy management. Without that visibility, if you look at the way people break into networks, that's what they're exploiting, is the fact that the policies are ineffective because the IT guys don't have either the expertise to set correct policy or the visibility to know what the policy is to set.
So I'm going to ask, just not on this slide deck, but it's an interesting question. Are we giving too much power to the consumer? Have we given too much, flexibility in their devices, and they're basically shooting their own feet off? I mean, is there a model that we would like, I'll pull my iPhone here, right? I mean, you have your app store, you can do everything you want to do, but it's an ecosystem, and it's meant for the purpose, right? It's a specific purpose-built device. Is that the kind of thing that we should be looking at then?
I think you have to work out how you're going to manage that. Fundamentally, I think you have to understand every network is hostile. Every network, your own network included. It's a hostile environment. So what you have to care about is what's happening to your data. And do you care at the point at which something happens to compromise you? Is your data still protected regardless of the fact that you're compromised? So you're in a dirty, hostile environment, yet you still protect what matters. And I think those are the technologies that we need to be looking at. And those are not necessarily single point technologies. And I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach to any security problem. It really comes down to what you look at in your risk profile. And you might be a person who accepts more risk. I mean, if you like skydiving, you're accepting a certain amount of risk, but you are hoping that the technology is developed enough to be able to protect what's important, your limbs and your legs and the piece of meat inside your head. That's important. The rest of it just has to work. So, but you might be very risk averse, and on the other side, so you just might want to never connect that specific piece of data to the network, ever, because that's important. So you have to find the balance.
Yeah, Ian and Manish, who are both chomping at the bit here. So,
I wanted to quickly just go back to the recurring theme of visibility and policy applicability, the ability to enforce policy, and stepping away from maybe focusing on point technologies or products that do that, but taking a more comprehensive approach to it and including the necessary support structures in even like the infrastructure, for example. Choosing infrastructure elements that are able to provide the information needed to add to the analytics to tie in activity on the network aside from activity at the application level. So the ability for network infrastructure, selecting your network infrastructure such that interfaces are available and vendors are supporting the ability to program policy flexibly into these advanced environments.
So that gets back to SDN and...
Right, correct. Right. So I think that taking it one step below and making sure it's a comprehensive approach from the infrastructure up all the way through to through the analytics is really important.
So we call that cloud to core protection.
Yep.
And to your point about giving the user too much power, it's my belief that the user is your power, that we try and constrain them and impose policies and restrictions upon them that become so burdensome that they go outside of their scope in order to get their job done. An example would be an infected laptop that a salesperson uses at the end of the quarter. He knows it's infected. He knows it's compromised. He keeps getting browser pop-ups, but it's going to take him 2 days to get it back to IT. So he keeps doing business with this technology instead of being able to solve his problem quickly and continue moving.
Can't get in the way of the users. It's an overwhelming force. Most I met with the chief information security officer a couple of weeks ago of a global payment company, and he says, look, if the business wants to run down the hallway with scissors in their hand, his job is to figure out how to help them do that and help them understand the risks and the trade-offs in doing so.
Is to remove all the cords from the hallway so he doesn't trip, but let him run.
So Manish, you've been very patient.
Well, I think I would largely agree that we can't put restrictions on users. That has never worked in the past and that will never work in the future. I do take a different point of view, though, from some of the panelists here. I don't necessarily believe that visibility is all what it is being touted to be. We read reports every day, all kinds of statistics, such as we are seeing targeted malware roughly every 3 minutes. What good does it do to me to have rather poor sensors deployed in my network that scream every 3 or 5 minutes, oh, my hair is on fire, right? First and foremost, what we need to do is put more accurate sensors, which tell me, and wherever possible, protect me. And yes, visibility can come later.
So that holds if we assume that there is a human at the end of the loop that's directly taking that data feed into the network, which has been the model of the last kind of several years. And provided that's true, you're absolutely right. That's why intrusion detection systems are problematic. Because when you deploy an intrusion detection system, it immediately starts shouting all these alarms at you. And so what most users do in response to that is they turn off all those things that are shouting at them, all the signatures that are shouting at them. And they've completely lost all the signal that would give them alerting in this. So what we need, where I think we're going to go with the big data analytic thing, is we're going to see a shift where instead of that raw data feed, we need telemetry feeds out in the network that give us high quality feeds, not garbage, but that is going into another system that is receiving all that data and piecing it together and through analytics and raising meaningful, actionable alerts to the end user.
So playing devil's advocate here for a second, yeah. I mean, the stuff that's in my logs, isn't that the stuff that I was protected against? It's the stuff that's not in my logs that I should be worried about, right? That's the stuff that's how I'm getting compromised.
But every time someone gets compromised, if you go back and do an incident analysis on that, like 99 times out of 100, they'll have a log management system in there. And they'll find that all the evidence that was there in the logs to have detected the breach in progress. There was no visibility into that. And so you need tools that help you.
So first thing is, hey, it's raining. You can't tell that you walk out the door, it's raining right now. Let's give ourselves some sensors to tell that it's pouring outside and we're getting wet.
Yeah, but I think there is a challenge, though, right? Which is, look, if we look historically, pretty much every sensor that we've deployed to date, whether it is on the endpoint or on the network, requires some sort of prior knowledge of vulnerabilities or malware. And we therefore characterize it in terms of signatures, right? AV has been doing that for the last 20 plus years. Intrusion detection, intrusion prevention tools have been doing that for the last 10 plus years. However, what we're finding now is these targeted attacks are bypassing the signature-centric capabilities. So first off, we have to rethink our approach. We can't rely on these signature-centric products. Now, if we were to place sensors in the network that start feeding some intelligent information to a northbound console, where I guess we could do some smart analytics, but at the end of the day, if those sensors are also signature-based, well, guess what? It's garbage in, garbage out. And so now if we take the other extreme and say, well, now we're going to record every single bit that is on the network so that we can analyze it ex post to find out malicious events, boy, are we making this problem too complex.
So, I mean, I'll jump in as a vendor that has products that play in all of these places. The point of an intrusion detection system or an intrusion prevention system is to afford you operational capacity to solve the other problems, to stop the known bads so that you're not spending all of your time fixing your network with things that you just don't need to deal with. Then you need to get into the advanced analytics and detecting the things that are targeted at you. But until you solve the fundamental operational problem of keeping your business running, keeping your users happy, and keeping the nuisance off of their systems, then you can't begin to hope to have the resources to solve the attacker that's hiding in the noise.
So just to paraphrase what you're saying, I'm going to use my rain example because I like it. In IPS or in AV, it's like an umbrella, right? So it's the known way that you're going to get wet or the known way you're going to be attacked. It buys you the time so that you can deal with the stuff that's coming at you sideways and focus there. Is that a...
Yeah, but
I'd say way of looking at it.
Sideways,
Right,
that is the most malicious.
But you need
I think back to Manish's point is, you know, if the attacker sees you holding an umbrella, they're resorting to the fire hose. They
that's-
know, you know,
but
it's a known quantity, right?
right.
But if
So
the goal is to get you wet, you at least need the umbrella.
But look, there are many. I think there are very, very many real-world parallels here. You know, and I think Jason's right. You know, there's a great prophylactic value in having a lot of these technologies in case that take care of the 99% of the threat that we know about. The problem is finding the single threat. Unfortunately, the real-world parallel, we saw it yesterday in London. The real-world threat is someone driving a car into someone and then hacking them to death in the street in a terrorist attack. And you find out, you go back, you peel it apart. Yes, we knew this guy. We knew he was there. We knew what he was doing. We knew he was involved. The problem is being able to prevent every single attack is never going to be possible. It's just not. But what you can then do is to take the knowledge that you learned from each attack and then build that into future defenses. So whether we can talk about signatures or whatever, and I disagree that everything is based on signature technology. There's a tremendous amount of work being done in improving where we were 20 years ago with signatures. So we can talk about heuristics, we can talk about predictive networks, we can talk about all kinds of different things that help. What we can't do is make sure every single individual attack cannot happen. What we can do is take that individual attack, apply our knowledge very, very, very quickly to everybody else on the internet who runs
Precisely.
those products and prevent it happening to all of them.
So I need to wrap up here, but I want to say, just sort of try and summarize what I've heard, which is that one is that we should, through different technologies, stop what we can, and then the stuff that we can't, that goal is to find out as quickly as possible from the point of infection to the point that you discover. If it's years, you got a problem. If you can make it days or weeks or hours, even better. And the game is about shortening the lifespan from when a compromise occurs to detection. And so that's sort of gets to the priorities. That's what you would prioritize. And I got to wrap up. Is that?
I wanted to add one more thing just to clarify a point, which is that each of those detection things that we use as prevention, the signals from those actually are part of the signal. So that the strategy is you increase your protection, then you use all that data as signal input to say that this attacker, this actor out there is doing something bad. And then from that, you're essentially setting up tripwires, barriers that they walk into. That alerts you to go examine them more carefully. And as Andrew points out, gradually ratchet up the number of tripwires and the better prevention. That's the circle we're talking.
Yeah, I'm not saying that customers should throw out their AV
I'm sorry,
and customers should throw out their intrusion detection products. That's definitely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, though, is that those products are not protecting us from the malware that is the most malicious, the malware that is going after your most sensitive information. And over a period of time, and this always happens in the IT industry, if you're not solving the most complex problem, you're not going to get as much money as you yesterday did. And we've seen this over the last 10 plus years. We've increasingly seen the cost of AV gone down, and that's a great thing because that frees up budget for the CISO to go spend it on technologies that are protecting him from more advanced threats. And that's the trend that's going to continue.
So the new summary is invest more in the things that work and invest less in the things that don't. Okay, I think that's it. Did time for Q&A or no? Okay, I think we're out of time. Well, thank you, everybody. A great group of panelists. Hopefully this has been informative. And I know we will all be around, at least for a little while. If you have any questions, I'd be very happy to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.